fifth time presenting for this group. Let me put my slides here. One sec. You see my screen? You see my management studio?
Yeah. I'm still coming.
All right, very good. Once again, thanks for the invitation to present to this group. It's an honor for me to be here today. My name is Javier Villegas from Argentina, and we will be talking about SQL Server 2022. The idea is to briefly cover all the updates on this new version. This is the latest and greatest version of SQL Server released recently in November last year. Okay, so a little bit about myself for the ones that don't know me. My name is Javier Villegas, as I said, from Argentina. I work at Mediterranean Shipping Company. I am Microsoft MVP since 2016. I'm Microsoft certified trainer, also a former member of the Azure Data Community Advisory Council. I'm one of the main organizers of SQL Argentina. This is our local community here. Also on the left side of the screen, you will see my contact information, my LinkedIn, Twitter handle, my blog, and my email address. Please feel free to reach me if you have any question related to this presentation, or if you would like just to connect, so we stay in touch. Okay, as I said, SQL Server 2022 was presented back in November in the yearly conference PASS Data Community Summit. I had the pleasure to present in a short video, in a short presentation, some of the features related to the performance in this new version, and explain how we at MSC are using these features. So it was a great honor for me. Okay, what is interesting about SQL Server 2022 is that it's not, it's the latest and greatest version, yeah, for sure. But at the same time, at the same time, it's an evolution of several versions that are coming since a few years ago. Microsoft called the evolution of the SQL Server modern version. And by that, they mean that the journey has started in SQL Server 2016, right? And where Microsoft has introduced certain features mainly related to performance, encryption, security, and availability. These are the three main pillars that SQL Server is focusing on: performance, availability, and security, right? So this was a journey that started in 2016. I see some of you taking pictures. I will share the presentation later in my GitHub. So feel free to take picture, but again, it's gonna be there. So related to performance, with a feature named Query Store, as I said, introduced in 2016, that was the main pillar, the base of everything that comes right after for performance, right? And in 2017, the main feature or the starlight was the possibility of running SQL Server on Linux platform, right? This is something that it was super nice to have the opportunity to run the most important database engine in another platform, right? And with that also in containers. SQL Server 2019, again, additional features related to performance that we will be covering in a minute, but also something super interesting, which is data virtualization. Data virtualization gives us the possibility to connect SQL Server to external modern storage, like, for example, Azure Data Lake, right? So nowadays, SQL Server 2022, right? Microsoft call it the Azure Enable with continuous performance and security innovation, right? Azure Enable, what is that Azure Enable thing? Well, first of all, is the version that allow us to have a very seamless interaction and integration with certain areas within Azure data, right? Which are these areas? Well, first of all, and something to briefly mention here, Microsoft is not focusing on new features. It's focusing on challenges, right? There are challenges, specific challenges, and releasing some features or set of features in order to tackle down those challenges. For example, regarding to business continuity, right? And this Azure Enable feature, which is link feature for managed instance. We will cover it in a second, but give you the opportunity to extend your high availability between an on-premise SQL Server and managed instance, right? The SQL managed service in Azure. So you can have your primary site on your SQL Server 2022, and at the same time doing replication or synchronization with managed instance. This is super cool. In the area of business analytics, right? The possibility of doing near real-time synchronization or replication with Synapse dedicated SQL pool. That means that you don't have to do ETLs anymore in some cases. That means that you will be able, and actually you are able to some of your operational tables, right, from your application, replicating almost real time in Synapse, right? You have your operational data in Synapse, and with that, you can do your data warehouse, you can do your Power BI reports, and you can take advantage of having real-time data in your environment. Regarding to security, PureView, right? Microsoft PureView is the suite which is targeted to data lineage, data insights, and security, not only between in SQL or Azure SQL, but also in many other products related to Azure, right? So with these three, let's say, set of features, high availability, data warehousing, and security, right, is why Microsoft called this Azure Enable with continued performance and security innovation. In the area of security, again, another new feature super cool called Ledger for SQL Server, which gives you the possibility of using cryptography within your operational tables, right? This is super nice for certain industries, for example, banking, in where you have to make sure that your data is not tampered at all, right? And then regarding to performance, new innovation in terms of performance with intelligent query processing, BNext, and additional set of features that we will cover in a second. The most interesting part is that all these features are not only in the SQL Server product, are coming from the edge till the cloud, right? So it's not only SQL Server, it's also Azure SQL. So, as I said, cloud connected, query intelligent, scalability, security, and availability, data virtualization, and enhancement as usual in the Transact SQL language, right? So how do we start using SQL Server 2022? Well, first of all, we have to, of course, make sure that our platform, our operating system support it. And then, we just need to do the installation, make sure that our databases compatibility levels are in 160. And with that, we're going to be able to start using 2022, right? We can also go directly to the Azure portal and deploy one of the images with SQL Server 2022. What is kind of interesting is that there are some changes in the setup program, right? You will see some difference. Some of those things are basically, there are several options that were removed But then there are others that are new, which are quite interesting. For example, in terms of Azure extension for SQL, you can register your on-premise SQL Server within your Azure subscription, and then you can handle it and manage it from Azure as if it is one of the Azure SQL virtual machines that you already have, right? This is super, super nice. Then in terms of licensing, right, there is a new way of license this, which is pay as you go, right? Same as in the virtual machines, right? You have your licenses per core, enterprise, your agreement with Microsoft, but also you have the possibility of doing pay as you go. This is super cool, and in some cases will allow you to reduce cost regarding to licensing, right? This is the part in where I was mentioning the new addition in the setup program for the license, right? You can still use a standard enterprise, but instead of having your product key, you can do it with pay as you go. As usual, there are several editions in where each of them has its own set of I won't say restriction, but capabilities, right? Express, developer, which are completely free of charge for non-production environment, standard edition, and enterprise edition. And within enterprise edition, you have per core licenses or enterprise, right? So briefly, connected to managed instance for high availability, to Synapse Analytics for real-time analytics, Purview for data insights and data lineage, but also regarding to Azure, you have the possibility for the very first time to be able to authenticate against your Azure Active Directory, right? Not only your regular Active Directory, but also against Azure Active Directory. There is also another service called Microsoft Defender for SQL, which is quite popular within the Azure SQL virtual machines, managed instance, and Azure SQL database, right? Which is a service that allows you to, the service run constantly in background in your SQL Server instance, right? All the time in background, and basically what it does, it detects if there is any anomaly related to security, right? For example, if there is something that may, let's say, if there is something which is not secure, right? Or any kind of activity that may be, for example, non-secure. If someone or something is trying to do, let's say, dynamic SQL or in SQL injection or any anomaly related to security, it will notify you and eventually will take some action, right? Super cool. And as I said, available also in SQL Server 2022. Okay, so let's go to the first set of features. Business continuity through Azure SQL Managed Instance, right? We all know that setting up high availability and disaster recovery is always challenging and difficult to set up and especially to maintain. Okay, now we have the possibility for the very first time with 2022 to have a distribute availability group with a very simple wizard, right? That will drive you through all the process, and you can set up the distribute availability group super easily, right? So you have your managed instance, you have your SQL Server 2022, and right away you set up the synchronization of your user databases. This way, if something happened in your primary, you can fail over to the managed instance, and eventually you can also do the failback, right? Another super interesting thing, which is also related to this, is that the license for the DR environment in managed instance is free, right? Free of charge. You don't, free of charge in terms of license, right? Okay, Also, there is another way to do offline disaster recovery, which is, again, for the very first time, have the possibility of doing a backup of your managed instance databases and restore it to SQL Server 2022, right? Before 2022, if you have your databases in managed instance, you don't have the possibility to bring it back to the SQL Server product, right? You have to stick in managed instance. Now you can take a backup either in SQL Server 2022 or managed instance and restore the same backup in the other environment. This way is way more simple to interact and to port your databases from the cloud to on-prem and the other way around. Before it was just a way up to the cloud and that's it, let's say. Okay, the other set of features, right, is Azure Synapse Link for SQL. Basically, the challenge here is to set up an ETL, right? We know that for an ETL, for a data warehouse or a business intelligence process, what we do is we develop the ETL, we run the ETL, moving the data from our operational databases to the data warehouse, right? But as soon as we do that, the data is out of date, right? Because, until we don't run the ETL process, once again, we don't have new data in our warehouse. So the business intelligence, the analytical process won't be able to use real-time data. With Synapse Link, we can define within SQL Server certain operational tables, and in a matter of few minutes, we see this data reflected in Synapse, right? And within Synapse, we can do machine learning. We can do, we can use it as a source for Power BI for the data. For the data warehouse, we can use Spark to do, as I said, machine learning. So super cool. And again, eventually, for some cases and for certain operational data, we're going to be able to have the data replicated right away. So let's see these two features combined, right? Managed instance for disaster recovery and Synapse Link for SQL Server. What I have here is a video because, of course, I have it ready. The one that I have, right? I installed a patch which broke my demo, so I will show the video. So in Management Studio 19, you have this new option, Azure SQL Managed Instance Link, in where you have two options, replicate database or failover, right? So here I'm connected to my SQL Server 2022, and I'm connected to one specific database, and we have this new option. So what I'm gonna do here is create the synchronization. So I have this wizard. It's gonna do a certain set of checks within my environment. It will check certain things. It will also recommend to specify two trade flags, 1800 and 9567, which are basically the ones that allow you to compress the stream for the availability group. So these two trade flags are not mandatory, but are super recommended. So that is why the wizard allow you to continue. But what I will be doing here in the demo is I will setting up those two trade flags. Setting the trade flag on my SQL Server 2022 right now. And then the only thing I just have to do is go back to the wizard, hit rerun, and now everything is fine, right? So I move on. It same as an availability group, it allows you to choose the databases that you want to put within your availability group. And you hit next, then you sign in into your Azure subscription, right? You put your username, your password, etc. And what comes next is it will populate with all the available managed instances, and you will select the one you want to do the synchronization, right? Here I will close the wizard because I have one already created, right? If you see here within SQL Server 2022, there are there is one availability group called HGDemoDB and one called DHGDemoDB, right? The DHGDemoDB is the one that got created automatically to synchronize against my managed instance, right? So what I have here, again, in my SQL Server 2022, we have the DemoDB database, which is synchronized this table, sample table CSV, right? We have several rows, and the first ID is the 5,000, right? This is my SQL Server 2022. There are almost 146,000 rows, right? This is my managed instance, right? I do a select, and I see exactly the same data, same as an availability group read-only replica. What happened on a read-only replica? If you try to delete something on the replica, you get this nasty error message saying you cannot do any change on the DemoDB because it's read-only, right? So we go back here to Management Studio, and here I'm connected to my serverless, my dedicated SQL pool in Azure Synapse Analytics. As you can see here, I'm connected to the three components, right? The SQL Server 2022, the first one, the one in the middle is the managed instance, and the last one is the dedicated SQL pool in Synapse, right? I have the same table, sample table CSV, with exactly the same data. The first ID node is 5,000, right? So I'm going to my SQL Server 2022 again, and what I will be doing here is I'm deleting 1,000 rows, right? So I say, okay, get rid of everything which is the ID is smaller than 6,000. So there are only 1,000 rows, right? So if I do the select again, now my first ID is 6,000. Without doing anything, I go to my managed instance, right? I do the same select, and we see that the data is completely synchronized there, right? Same as in a regular availability group, but this is a managed instance, right? And again, if I go to my dedicated SQL pool within Synapse, I see exactly the same data replicated. This is super powerful, right? We see the data there all the time, and we can keep, deleting rows, and we will see this reflected in managed instance and Synapse, right? Okay, moving on. In terms of security, as we mentioned, deeply integrated with Purview, with authentication in Azure Active Directory and Microsoft Defender for SQL. Then we have the part related to performance, right? We all know that it's a big challenge, everything which is related to query tuning, right? It's expensive and really time consuming. In that area, Microsoft came up with intelligent query processing, right? Nowadays, intelligent query processing relies on query store for certain features. The goal here is to be able not only to have better performance, but also have performance which allows you to be constant on the time, right? We know as DBA that one of the most, let's say, difficulties that we face is that when something is running properly and once a day out of nowhere, it just has starting regressions, right? This is super, super complex. Before moving on with query store and intelligent query processing, does anybody have any question till now of what we covered?
Yeah.
No? I can hear you very well, eh?
Yeah. Javier, you can proceed on. We are here with you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So The goal, as I said, is not only to make performance better, but also stable over time, right? So in this sense, Microsoft added to intelligent query processing in this version, call it next generation, three new options or features at the top of it. Degree of parallelism feedback, cardinality estimation feedback, and parameter sensitive plan optimization. The first two of them rely on Query Store. Remember, Query Store is this repository of performance data, which actually capture in our user databases, right? All the executions, all the runtime statistic, all the waste tabs, and with that we can do certain analysis and see where we are having performance problems. Now these two features rely on this data which is collected, and we will see why. Then there is this other one called parameter sensitive plan optimization, PSP, which is not relying. We will cover that also in a second. What is the beauty of degree of parallelism feedback and cardinality estimation feedback? Let's see it in action. First of all, in order to do it, well, we know we have to go to compatibility level 160, which is the latest and greatest. Something super interesting is that nowadays in this version, when you create a brand new database, Query Store gets enabled by default, right? It's not as it was before, that you have to manually enable. Now, when you have a new database, definitely is Query Store is enabled by default. So this feature, let's start with cardinality estimation feedback. We know that there are certain, let's say, hints that may affect the execution of a specific statement. That means is that, for example, if we add a hint, maybe it's going to run faster, it's going to use less resources, it's going to use a different set of options, right? Nowadays, to apply those hints, we need to identify the statement that may get some benefit of the hint, modify the procedure to apply the hint, recompile it, of course, and then check if the new execution is actually better than the one that we got before. So if the hint in reality makes some benefit, or the other way around, it added some regression and now it's even worse, right? All those kind of things, we have to do it nowadays manually. And let's jump a little bit also to the other feature, which is degree of parallelism feedback, right? We know that there is a specific hint, it's max DOP, that we can set the degree of parallelism per statement, right? If we identify ourselves a statement, we open the procedure, we add the hint, we recompile it, and we check the following execution to see if it is better or not. What if I tell you that with this feature, CE feedback and DOP feedback, SQL Server is doing all of that for you without you doing anything? Is detecting the statements, all the statements within your workload, which is going to be benefit of having any hint. It's going to be benefit of moving the degree of parallelism automatically down, right? Without you having to identify it, modify it, and verify it, right? This is super cool because it's happening all the time in background without you doing anything, right? This is to the additional features in previous version of intelligent query processing, like, for example, memory grant feedback, right? So this is another layer of features coming at the top of IQP, and in this case for CE feedback and DOP feedback. Super nice, and we will see some of them in action. The other feature is parameter sensitive plan optimization, and this is super cool. This is also, again, to benefit in performance. And what is one of the most complex problems that we have since ever, actually? When we create a store procedure and we execute it for the very first time, SQL Server will compile the plan and will save it into cache. Then we may use another parameter, right, which probably the plan that is in cache is not ideal for that parameter because, for example, instead of needing a seek, it may need a scan on the table. But it will use the one that is in cache, right? And this is where we're going to have these problems of regressions, parameter sniffing, all those kind of things, right? Nowadays, we know that SQL Server is storing one plan cache for each of the execution. Is there any question there? No? Okay, so nowadays we execute it for the very first time and it required a seek. Then if we execute it the second time with a different parameter, maybe it's required another plan which is going to involve a scan, right? And this is the one that we have in cache. But if we go back to the previous execution with the parameter number 1, which required a seek, the one that we have in cache is a scan. So definitely it's going to take a long time to come up with, right? So now with PSP optimization, and this is really, really cool, we're going to execute the store procedure for the very first time that required the plan with a seek. It will be stored in the cache. We will execute it again with a different parameter that requires a scan. And what SQL Server will be doing is storing both plans in the cache, right? So depending which parameter you use, it's going to use one or the other, right? It's not going to store one plan for every single parameter, right? It will internally decide which one is the best, right? So this is super nice because, again, it's trying to handle the parameter sniffing problem that we have since day one. So a little bit more insight regarding to the DOP feedback. We know that it's super complicated, right? You can read as many blogs as you want, and everybody may have a different opinion on how to set up max DOP. You can do it at instance level, at database level, or at statement level, right? But what this feature is doing it for you at statement level. Identified if maybe for this specific statement, it's going to have a benefit of executing on a lower DOP, right? And how does it work? It's going to be running the query. It's going to be storing all this information within query store. And there is a background task that is evaluating if it's going to be benefit. And it will put the hint for you without you having to do anything. You won't have to identify the procedure, put the hint manually, and verify. Everything's going to be done constantly for you within query store. So let's see all this in action. Okay, so here I have the one that was coming before, which was memory grant feedback, right? So what I have here is my SQL Server 2022. What I'm going to do here, I'm cleaning the procedure cache, I'm cleaning the query store, everything. Then I have created a store procedure called sp-demo mgf. What I'm going to do here is execute this store procedure, right? I just create it. There is nothing in the cache. It's the very first time that I execute it. Is just running the store procedure, right? Memory grant feedback is basically, SQL Server is granting memory to this specific plan, and every time that we execute it, it's going to use that memory that was granted. In this case, the memory that was granted is not enough, right? So it's using the TempDB to spill the data into TempDB. That is why it's taking several seconds, right? So it's still running, again, a simple procedure, which is doing a couple of joins, first time I execute it, is there, right? It's still running. It's still running. It's going to take a few more seconds. Okay, we see the plan. Here we have the warning, and this is what it's saying that is spilling into the MDB. Here we see 53 seconds, right? We have few DMB here to check, and we see, okay, the query store had detected this execution, has provided a feedback, and this is the memory that used in the previous execution. I will be executing the store procedure again. And you see, I haven't done any change in the code. It took 53 seconds the previous time that I executed. Now that I'm running it again, it took 2 seconds, right? And if we go again to my DMB, I will see that it's a valid feedback, and now the memory assigned is this one. So without me having to do any change at all, right? SQL Server automatically granted the proper amount of memory, right? And is using this new set. This is something that was coming in previous version of SQL Server. The beauty of this is that in previous version of SQL Server, if you restarted your instance, all this information just vanish, just disappear, and you have to start over. And the first execution is going to take several seconds. Now, since all this information is persistent within Query Store, if we restart the instance, right, we have this data persistent in Query Store, and now it's working fine again. Right? Super cool. I have the other one, which is CE feedback, right? For CE feedback, what we will be doing here is I will be creating an extended event session, so we see this in action. Let me move it here. Here I have my extended event session, so we'll see what the engine is doing behind the thing. I will get here and see watch live data. So what I'm doing here is, again, just changing compatibility level to 160, cleaning the query store for the demo purpose, and cleaning the procedure cache. I'm creating a store procedure. Super simple. Here is a select with a where. What I'm doing is executing this procedure 15 times. I'm just running it 15 times. Now I will check, and I see that there is nothing in my query store DMBs. I will execute it once again, time number 16. Checking again my query store. And now I see something here, which is saying, hey, there is a CE feedback, which is still pending of validation, which is basically saying that it can assign a specific hint. I run it again. And in this case, it's saying verification regress. The problem was that it took me too much to run it one more time. But if I run it all together, again, in one shot, what we will see is that in this case, the verification pass, and now we have in this specific query ID number 1, it has added using query store this specific hint. Use assume minimum selectivity for filtering. So this is like opening the store procedure and adding the hint down here, but we didn't do anything. If we go to query store, to extended event, we see that it just did the analysis, performed the validation, right? And it's continued doing it all over again, right? Super, super cool. All right. Okay, there are many other enhancements in SQL Server 2022 in terms of security. As I said, leisure before, always encrypted, scalability, a lot of improvement in 10DB, asynchronous updates and concurrency. In availability, there is also a new concept of contained availability group that for the very first time, you are able to not only replicate your user databases, but also you can synchronize your logins and your SQL shops, right? So super interesting. We will see a slide later on. The feature related to ledgering, where we can use cryptography in our operational tables, right? We know that, for example, if we have a banking application and we have a table in where we are storing data, even if you put the right permission, you always have the sysadmin that eventually can tamper the data, delete, update, or do anything, right? There are certain entities that may require this not to happen. So for leisure table is using the blockchain technology within SQL Server, right? To not allow anybody to modify the table, just do inserts, right? And even if you are sysadmin, you cannot do any change. And you have a change log, a tracking that is coming constantly in the background in case you need it. And also there is a hash function that you can provide to any authority that would like to verify that the data has not been tampered, so they can compare the hash and make sure that the data is completely untouched, right? So for certain areas like financial areas, this is super cool. In terms of TempDB, we know, again, same as DOP, this is super challenging, right? Setting up TempDB, depending on what you read, etc., is going to be super hard to see how many files, the size, the location, etc. Now in SQL Server 2022, you don't have to worry that much about that because Microsoft addresses the SGAM and GAN concurrency and the contention. So there is less contention in the TempDB without you doing anything, right out of the box. For contained availability groups, the one that I mentioned before, right? You can have your user databases, but it's also within the availability group, you will have a specific master and a specific MSDB database in where you will handle the logins and the shops within this new contained availability group. Being able to use data virtualization on object storage, for example, from SQL Server, being able to connect to an ADLS version 2, and if you have CSV file, if you have Parquet file, if you have anything in the store, you can access as if you are within SQL Server, right? Let's see how we can connect to a data lake from SQL Server. I have a brief demo here. There are external tables. Okay, here what I'm doing is from SQL Server without doing anything, I will be doing a select to a public storage account, which is storing the taxi information from New York. It's stored in Parquet format. So if I do this without doing anything, because this one is public, otherwise we may have to set up the credentials to access, etc. I get access to this data without doing anything as a table, right? So this is stored in an external data lake, but I'm accessing it from SQL Server. Super cool. Okay, enhancement in the T-SQL language, right? There's still not JSON data format, but there are functions to handle JSON and new functions to do whatever you are doing right now, but in a simple way, right? Greatest, less, enhancement on a split stream operation. So really, really nice. So as a summary, right? SQL 2022 is Azure enabled for disaster recovery, analytics, and security. The whole built-in intelligence reduce the complexity of tuning in and gain on performance without code change. You see it in action. You don't have to modify your code. These features just arise right away. A lot of innovation in security, scalability, and availability. Data virtualization to get access to the data stored in object storage, right? And enhancement in SQL. You want to learn more, right? This is the set of links in where you can get access to, right? This one will help you to download the bits for 2022, get the demos, get the book, an early version of the book from Bob Ward, training, everything. Here is the QR code that will drive you directly to the learning page in the Learn portage, and the same for Azure SQL Fundamentals. And with that, we just finish the presentation. Not sure if there are questions. As I said, I will share this presentation later, so it's available. It's on mute. Eh? Sorry, I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now I do, yes.
Yeah, thanks, Javier, for your nice presentation. We came to know that a lot of interesting features are available in SQL Server 2022. And we are very happy to know that you are from Argentina. We have millions of fans and followers of your national football team. We'll see you again. And most of us are interested to connect to in LinkedIn. Thank you, Javier.
Thank you so much for the invitation one more time, and we stay in touch, and well, have a great day.
Yeah.
Goodbye.